At dawn, just before the alarm was supposed to ring, my phone vibrated softly beside me. The room was still dark, the air heavy with another sleepless night. The other side of the bed was empty again, smooth and cold, as if no one had been there for hours. I glanced at the screen and saw her text. It was brief and vague, promising an explanation later and telling me not to worry. I didn't feel surprised. I didn't feel angry either. What settled into my chest was exhaustion, the deep kind that comes from giving too much understanding for too long. Her words were light, almost dismissive, written as if my emotions were an inconvenience she trusted I would handle quietly. There was no apology, no concern, only the assumption that I would keep waiting, like I always had. I stared at the phone and thought about the past months. The late nights, the sudden changes of plan, the growing distance she blamed on pressure and fatigue. In that still moment, something inside me finally settled. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew exactly where I stood. I typed my response carefully, without bitterness. You don't need to explain. Stay where you are. I'm letting you go. When I sent it, my hands were steady. Instead of pain, I felt a strange calm. Relief washed over me, not because it didn't hurt, but because I stopped lying to myself. I set the phone down and walked into the kitchen, listening to the low hum of appliances and the faint sounds of the city waking up. I made coffee and stood by the window as the sky slowly softened from black to gray. The quiet felt different than I expected. I had imagined confrontation, raised voices, tears. None of that came. What I felt was closure. I thought about how often I had been made to feel unreasonable for asking simple questions, how my doubts were brushed off as insecurity. She had grown comfortable knowing I would stay no matter what. Comfort turned into carelessness. Love without respect doesn't explode. It fades into neglect. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. Whatever message she sent back wouldn't change what I had already accepted. I had been alone long before that morning. I had just finally admitted it. I sipped my coffee and whispered to myself that I deserved peace, not constant uncertainty. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang, sharp and frantic. It rang again, and again, as if the person outside was terrified I wouldn't answer. I didn't rush. I stayed still, letting the sound echo through the house. Then I heard her voice, breaking as she called my name. The same person who told me not to worry was now unraveling. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. She stood there disheveled, eyes red, hair unkempt, gripping her phone like a lifeline. The confidence she usually carried was gone. When she rang the bell again, harder, I felt no satisfaction, only confirmation. The illusion she lived in had cracked. She had believed I would always wait. Reality arrived sooner than she expected. I opened the door. She froze, as if she didn't recognize me, not because I looked different, but because I wasn't playing my familiar role. She broke down immediately, apologies tumbling out alongside excuses. She tried to step inside, but I remained in the doorway, calm and unmoving. That silence said more than any argument ever had. She reached for me, pleading for a chance to explain. I let her speak. Stress, loneliness, confusion, everything except responsibility. The daylight revealed her fear, not of losing me, but of losing control. When her words slowed, I spoke quietly. I reminded her that she told me to relax, and I finally had. She looked stunned, as if calm was more frightening than anger. She insisted it meant nothing, that it was never supposed to go this far. I nodded and replied that things always go this far when someone believes there are no consequences. That truth shattered what was left of her composure. Tears couldn't undo choices. Love can survive mistakes, but entitlement erodes it silently. I told her I wasn't trying to punish her. I was finished hurting myself. That landed harder than shouting ever could. She sank to her knees, clinging to my hand, offering promises, honesty, change, counseling, anything. I believed she meant them in that moment, but desperation isn't the same as transformation. I gently pulled my hand away and explained that trust doesn't reset just because fear shows up. I had already spent years giving chances she never protected. For the first time, the future wasn't something she could manage or negotiate. The sun was fully up now, lighting the street as neighbors went about their mornings, unaware that a relationship was ending quietly on my doorstep. She stood slowly and asked where she was supposed to go. I didn't answer, not to be cruel, but because it was no longer my responsibility. That silence carried the truth she had avoided for years. She nodded, defeated, and stepped back. No shouting. No more pleading. Just understanding arriving far too late. She turned and walked away. I closed the door softly and leaned against it, breathing in the stillness. The house felt emptier, yet lighter. As I looked around, I realized peace doesn't always feel joyful. Sometimes it feels like acceptance. That morning taught me that choosing yourself doesn't require revenge or drama. Sometimes it only takes one quiet message before sunrise, and the strength to stand by it. For the first time in a long while, I knew I would be fine.